Your Sunday today to partake in this ongoing series of town halls being facilitated by the Council of Islamic Organizations. And the whole purpose of this is to engage our community at a congressional district level, to have an opportunity to meet your local Congress representative, to have an opportunity to pose your questions and share the concerns that you have. So this forum can best reflect what is important to you as a member of the 3rd Congressional District. So on behalf of the Council of Islamic Organization and behalf of the Mosque Foundation, we welcome you. And more importantly, we welcome our most honored guest today, Congressional Representative of the 3rd District here in Illinois, Marie Newman. Thank you for being with us. You know, what really has given the impetus, in part, to why we're here today, started back in 1992, and where a half dozen mosques here in Greater Chicago were frustrated. What were they frustrated about? They were frustrated that their voice was not being heard. Standing alone, they were denied access to their representatives, and they felt they needed to do something more. So they came together and formed a federation called the Council of Islamic Organizations, and invested and delegated to that organization to be a voice, to share the collective concerns of the Muslim community here in Greater Chicago. Over the last 29 years, CIOGC has grown to now a membership of 70 different masajid, schools, and social service agencies here in Greater Chicago. And as a part of its mission, it is also, let me stop at this particular point because it brings another analogy. You know, they said even when we stand together, we're strong, but we're only as strong as our weakest link. So another focus that we have as an entity is how do we make sure each individual organization within our federation is strong. Well, we have to deal with some of the basic Maslow's order of priorities. We got to make sure that basic needs are met. That's why we led in a food distribution drive, now for supporting masajid, establishing health clinics and community nursing, and we recently have been awarded grants through the state of Illinois to provide needy families with housing and utility assistance. So we're dealing with the basic needs, inshallah. And this is part of our mission. But that's not enough, because our needs go beyond satisfying those basic needs of food, clothing, and shelter. And that's what brings us here today. Because CLGC, remind everybody, we are not a political organization. We are not partisan. Our objective is to bring those individuals who are to represent our voice in where policies are made, such as Congress, to have them understand what we are concerned about, and just as importantly, to hear what they're working on and how we as a community can support those endeavors. Because clearly this is a job where we all must work together. We can no longer stand in silos and expect to succeed in a growing partisan, polarizing environment that we have. We have to break down those walls, and that's why we're here today, to have representatives of the Mosque Foundation, Orland Park, MASS, AMP, all of us to come together to share our concerns. So we're here today not only in live, but this is being live streamed, and we're sharing this with those that care not to come out on this still as we're in the midst of a pandemic, and to understand where we are at today. And once again, to understand the purpose of this is not about CIOGC, this is about us empowering our members. We are here at the home of the Mosque Foundation, probably the largest concentration of Muslims here in Northeastern Iowa are in the 3rd Congressional District, and we need those voices to step forward. Today, I'm going to take this opportunity to introduce to you the moderator for today, a hard worker, head of the civic engagement efforts here at the Mosque Foundation, also partakes as a leader with the United States Council of Muslim Organizations, and the list goes on. I would like to introduce to you at this time Ayub Raza.
Assalamu alaikum. So thank you again everyone for coming. We really appreciate this turnout, and to everyone watching on the stream and in the future, we hope this program is educational and useful to us as a community. Thank you, Marie, for coming. So as you know, the format of our program will be context to the questions that we'll ask, and then we'll ask the question to Marie. And then following that, inshallah, our members from CIOGC will discuss a little more about the mission of the council, inshallah. So let's begin with our first question. We begin with local matters and domestic issues. And our first question is, Congresswoman Newman, so as you know, many members of our community own small businesses. The ongoing pandemic has shuttered countless establishments, while the owners of the remaining businesses continue to struggle to remain open. Challenges continue to mount with our economy transforming into a digital online marketplace. Traditional business practices are being abandoned. The cost to keep pace with these technological changes are beyond the reach of businesses struggling to stay afloat. Many essential workers remain unemployed and underemployed, and their earnings are insufficient to meet their monthly rent obligations. The first question is, what initiatives or policies have you championed or proposed to assist small business owners? And the second question is, with the moratorium of evictions being challenged in courts and scheduled to end, what housing options do you propose?
So I'm going to unpack that. Well, first of all, assalamu alaikum. How is everyone today? First things first, and let me thank CIOGC and the Mosque for having me today. It's lovely for you to host, so appreciate you all very much. And let me just say, appreciate everybody's work too. We've had a rough year and a half, and both these organizations have been admirable in helping all communities, so thank you so much. And so we'll go ahead and answer the first question, and we'll unpack that a little bit, right? So small businesses, I have the great fortune of sitting on the Small Business Committee in Congress, and thrilled to do that. Many of you know I'm also a former small business owner, so I have felt the pains of entrepreneurialism and small business ownership. So I'll talk specifically what my office has done, and then what we're doing in a greater, more expansive way in Congress. So I've introduced 12 bills as the lead. We've passed 4. And we have, the rest are pending going to the Senate. So with that, the first one that I think is most applicable is I have passed the REST Act, which is an act that would relieve the tax burden of our smallest of our small businesses. So typically a small business can deduct about 20% of their business expenses. This raises the bar to 25%. So what that does is it effectively reduces your taxes and allows you to have more working capital inside your business, which is really important and will be helpful. A few other things is the 504 Act, many of you may or may not know about. That is a loan fund that is available through the federal government that ran out of money about 2 weeks ago. And so what I did very quickly was put together legislation that would reconstitute the fund to the 15% of what it totally is in a year, so that people could continue to benefit from it. And it got rolled into the Reconciliation Act, which we're voting on next week. So that will become active later this year and will be reconstituted. A couple of other things that are really important. Notoriously in American business are people of color owners, small business owners, and immigrant owners. Quite frankly, and I'll just say something, they get the shaft, they jump, and always have. So one of the things that I'm working on in all my legislation is to make sure that people of color that own small businesses go to the front of the line when they've typically been in the back of the line. So I look through that lens whenever I'm building legislation. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Recently we found out that the federal contractor opportunities for small businesses is low, and isn't the immigrant community and the people of color communities are not participating at the same rate rate of white communities. So what I did was I put a piece of legislation together that would require federal contractors expand the amount of opportunities and put people of color-owned businesses in the front of the line and have the opportunity first. And that's pending in Congress right now. A few other things that might be of interest is, so I don't know if you're familiar with the microloan. It's one of those loan funds for the smallest of the small businesses. It expanded the amount of that you can loan from the federal government or borrow from the federal government and how quickly you get it, because it's a bit of a sticky program and we streamlined it. And there are a series of other things that are a bit in the weeds, but those are some of the things we've done for small business. I think equally important to the legislation is a couple of critical things. So Shannon Malley, my Chief of District Affairs right here. Shannon, if you want to say hi to everybody. She is also my small business expert in my district office. And what we have done is we've visited probably over 75 businesses since in my short tenure in Congress. The reason is because you give me great ideas for legislation that will solve bigger problems. When I hear your granular problems, I am able to better solve bigger problems. So we have actually developed legislation based on those conversations with those small businesses. And we continue to service the community. We had a job fair about 3 months ago that was very successful, and we had about 200 candidates come through. And we are going to have an entrepreneurial fair in first quarter that will engage the entrepreneurial community and small business committee that are looking to develop small business so they can access capital and they can access workers and they can access technologies and vendors and clients. So that's a sampling. If you want more, my team can give it to you.
Thank you, Congressman.
Congresswoman Newman, first I want to apologize. We should have offered you the opportunity first to present your platform, what you have to say. So please take this time now,
Okay.
if you would do that, and then we'll follow up with another question.
We'll make that short because I'd rather answer everybody's questions because there's a lot of broad-based things going on, but I want you to be able to answer your specific questions that you need. So I'll be short in my remarks. I think the best way to think about my office is that we, as a team in my DC office and my district office, look at everything through a lens of equity and the green economy. And what that means is making the economy fairer for everybody so that everybody can participate. So obviously I support big hallmark things like $15 an hour, healthcare for all, Medicare for all, and on and on. But things that are less seen are paid leave, which would allow parents to be able to stay home with their kids when needed, or with their parents if their parents need it, or a loved one. So paid leave is a really big deal to me. One of the things I'm proudest of that went into the reconciliation package, and we'll talk broader in a moment, is universal child care. In our country, and this is astonishing to me, that through the pandemic, we lost 70% of our child care system, 7-0. Combination of school issues plus our child care facilities. So with that, universal child care will be critically important, and that's been rolled into the reconciliation package. So let's talk more broadly about the two largest pieces of legislation that will be truly transformational as we move forward. One is the bipartisan infrastructure package, which will have a fix-it-first mentality that will go into all of our districts and fix roads and bridges that are ailing, and civic infrastructure like viaducts and the like. But it also has a huge green initiative in it that it will require healthy substrates are used and a workforce training component. We've lost a lot of our workforce because people have either retired or they've decided to move on. So the workforce training piece is critically important in the bipartisan infrastructure package. On the other side of the package, which is known as the Build Back Better package or the human infrastructure package, it provides 2 years of community college or other types of training programs free to all Americans. It provides what I said, universal child care, paid leave. It provides a great deal of funding to hospitals and clinics and those organizations that are working hard on the ground. I just visited a great organization, they're usually called community-based clinical organizations, in Worth not too long ago that was doing just great God's work and is now opened up to a larger facility and will continue to do that work. So those types of organizations will be funded for sure. And the list goes on, but effectively what it will do is that it will bring back the caring economy and bring back our prestige as a #1 country in infrastructure and transportation. One of the things I'm very, very interested in is high-speed rail, because it'll be healthier and it'll get people to the places that they need to go. One of the issues of equity that we have beyond climate justice and social justice and all of those things is transportation justice. A lot of people can't get to their jobs. They can't afford a car and they can't get to their jobs. So one of my main concerns on the ground here, as well as nationally, is to fill in the transportation deserts. That's a critical issue for me. I sit on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, and one of the things I'm proudest of that I was part of for the big package is that how the money will be dispersed. Frequently in Congress, and they haven't had a lot of management consultants in Congress like me, they don't understand on the back end of the process, things can go awry. So the way that the monies will be distributed will be a combination of going to the municipalities as well as directly to contractors so that they can do the workforce training and get these projects up and running faster. So that's a broad-based kind of overview. If anybody wants to ask questions beyond that, that's great.
Thank you for that introduction. And let me kind of switch to a rising concern here in the Muslim community. As we're all aware of, thousands of Afghans are being resettled here in the United States. And the handful of agencies within our community that address this are being told by government officials, without getting what levels they are, that they need help finding housing, they need help finding translators, and they need help, in essence, smoothing the transition of thousands of people here into American society. So with that said, and the other thing we're hearing is there's no money. What proposals are you pushing, or what is your policy position on how can we successfully resettle these thousands of Afghan refugees coming to our country, and more particularly right here in the Chicagoland area?
Thank you for that question, because it's very important and near and dear to my heart. So it is not true that there's not money. I don't know who's saying that, and please tell me who it is when we're in private. I'm serious, because that's wrong. So there was an act passed called the Allies Act that was $500 million fund that will be dispersed to all of the cities that will be cities and metropolitan areas that will be accepting our wonderful new neighbors, the Afghan refugees. So there is money for it, there are programs for it, and it is available. The second thing is that Governor Pritzker also has put together a fund and a network of folks that will get access to transportation, healthcare, jobs, and housing once they get here. So there are lots of opportunities, and if you have trouble connecting with us, so if you have a new neighbor coming from Afghan that needs help, please contact my office. We're happy to help.
The other aspect, a follow-up question is, as we understand it, resettlement agencies are saying that they have the primary jurisdiction for addressing the needs of the refugees that are coming in. However, and I think it's even more acute with Afghan refugees, as there's a cultural divide between, let's say, Christian-based or Jewish-based organizations and the Pashtun people coming here to our country. What we're looking for is, what suggestions would you offer? How can you assist in our community, our organization, serving an integral role in assisting these Afghan families that are coming down into our neighborhood?
Well, it sounds like we need to have a meeting and figure that out. My staff even can coordinate with Shadden. I am going to be in high legislative mode, and I'll be honest, I'm not going to be around a lot for the rest of the year because we're going to be passing a bunch of bills that will get the money to you. So please meet with my staff. I'm happy to solve those problems with you, and let's brainstorm and figure it out. If you're not getting what you need, you need what you don't have.
Thank you very much.
So we're going to move on to a little broader perspective. We're going to move to some national issues here. Congressman Newman, as nationalist and racist ideologies increase, so too does religious intolerance. Religious hatred directed at Muslims is on the rise again, and our children are experiencing the brunt of religious hate in school. Our first question is, have you or do you intend to support the appointment of a special envoy for monitoring and combating Islamophobia, and to specifically include anti-Muslim violence as a per se crime, which means you don't have to, prove intent. And then our second question is, what policy initiatives do you suggest to address religious intolerance and hate in schools and maybe in broader society?
Yeah, and all important, and sadly, I've seen that hatred and hate crimes and Islamophobia up close and personal, so I'm intimately aware of it, and have talked to many schools about it. I'll go at a higher level, and then we'll get more granular. So at a higher level, one of the things that I did 20 years ago for my kids' programs, my kids are old now, they're 20 and 23, but I did cultural programming as a parent, as a PTO, on all types of religion and the value and valor of all types of religion, and then all types of not religion. You don't have to be religious to be a good person. That program actually won awards in Northern Illinois, and so that's one of the pieces of legislation I'm looking at, is requiring studies around religion, not religious studies, but studies around awareness of religions and all of their wonderful work that they do. And then also around traditions and cultures. That should be a mandate in our curriculum. So that's one thing I'm working with 3 members of Congress on right now, is to instill that into our federal curriculum. Because part of this is that there's never an excuse for hate. There just isn't, and I don't allow for excuses around it. But when kids are very little, they tend to learn and assimilate these things at a much higher level, and they actually have an effect on their parents. So let's do that, right? So at a curriculum level in school, it's very important to address it. On a granular level, I think that our hate crimes and bullying have to have a bunch of venues. So you should have the ability to go to your local law enforcement, and I know these things don't get, they actually don't get accounted for, and they don't get reported because people are afraid. We have to figure out a way to have a hotline where people can share that. Again, at the younger person's level for kids in school, I have just put together a piece of legislation that's going to the, actually went to the floor on Thursday morning, that is a mental health student hotline that they can talk about bullying, Islamophobia, whatever the hate act is, and then it will be acted upon by a professional. So those are some of the more granular things that I propose. But the other thing that I think that we're going to start doing next, probably at the beginning of the year, is looking at peace dinners, where we bring all faiths together in big forums to talk about each other's wonderful faiths and traditions and cultures. Because again, we can do it in school, but if we do it as neighbors, it's even better when we break bread together.
In the audience, great questions. Please keep sending them up. And it looks like we're going to have some time to get to those. And then we'll come back to some national issues. So we're going to move on to some international issues.
Yeah.
Protests in response to the forced displacement of indigenous Palestinians has led to a violent response by occupying powers in East Jerusalem and the West Bank. This May led an effort to Secretary Blinken to pressure Israel to halt illegal evictions. Our first question is, have you received a response since submitting that letter? And our second question is, what steps can our community take to assist your office in leading the effort to protect the rights and dignity of Palestinian people and oppressed people across the world? Right?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that, and we haven't received a formal response yet. My staff has talked to various parts of the State Department, and they are working on this issue. They just don't have any tangible results yet. So as a result of that, my staff and I are putting together a very small group, and you'll learn more about this later in the year, to meet with Wendy Sherman. She is the Deputy Secretary of State under Blinken, so that she can learn firsthand what's going on, not just in Sheikh Jarrah and some of the other areas that are affected this, but universally. There's a long list of humanitarian rights that are being violated, long list, for a long time. And I think that the Biden administration has been neglective or neglectful of these issues. So we're putting together a meeting between Barbara Lee, Congresswoman Barbara Lee is head of the Peace and Justice Committee inside of Congress, and she and I are putting that together as we speak. It just takes a while because they're addressing Afghanistan and a lot of international issues. So those are the primary things we're working on. But you likely know that I've spearheaded several letters. And I also want to tell you we're making progress. So one of the first letters I did was a vaccine letter when we saw the vaccine apartheid going on. You know, usually with those types of letters, you get 7 or 8 people to sign it in Congress. Well, we got 20 some odd people to sign it. So we're making headway, we're educating, and we're moving on. And with the displacement letter, we had the same thing. I think we had 25 people sign on to it. So we've made progress. I just want to make progress in a way that is strategic. So I'm not a jump on the bandwagon type of strategy person. I actually want things to actually have impact and do something. So as I tell everybody, and I know that part of your question was, what can you do, is, this is my tough love conversation, right? Is everybody ready? You gotta start talking to your senators. What did I just say? You can talk to me all day long, and I can scream and do all those things until you talk to the Senate and the administration. Nothing will change. I'm just being honest with you, and you have to start doing it. And I know people say they are, but when I talk to senators, they've never heard from anybody. So they're either lying or you're not screaming loud enough. So you just need to scream louder. So that's what I have to tell you, is that you have much more power than I do. That said, we are going to keep partnering on letters and meetings with the State Department and require them to be accountable and address this issue. But until the larger organizations like CIOG, and all the other organizations across the nation, and there's just a myriad of millions or hundreds of organizations with millions of members that are doing great work, you have got to start getting to their donors and talking to senators. I can't stress that enough, and there's no shortcut. I wish there was. If there was, I would give it to you. If there was a pill, I would give it to you, but there isn't. You have to start talking to the administration directly, and you have to start talking to, because we do not change minds in the House of Representatives. We have no ability to change minds. What we do is we educate the public and we educate Congress. But until senators start changing policy and the administration starts changing policy, it's not going to change. And I just want to be clear on that. So yelling and screaming about a bill that funds 40 countries is not effective. I'm just being very, very honest with you.
Well, thank you so much, Congresswoman officials, because sometimes we just dial the wrong number and try to find an answer. So appreciate that. Yeah. One little thing I want to tell the audience and for the Congresswoman too, the way we got these questions that we are asking today in the town hall is through your constituency. We had, due to COVID, we were not able to get a lot of people here, but there were Google Forms that were shared, and people from this community, from District 3 especially, they shared their concerns and their questions, and that's how we've been asking these questions. Sure. We're also giving opportunity to the audience to write their questions and give it to us here. There's one question that came from the audience, and I would love to read that to you, if you can please answer that. Are there any plans, written legislation, or proposals for direct relief to families making $200,000 or less, individuals making $75,000 or less, in the form of direct stimulus checks and additional support to continue the child tax credit?
So let's start with child tax credit, and thank you for that question. So child tax credit monthly payments, if you haven't already accessed them, the best way is to go to IRS, but feel free to reach out to my office. You should be receiving your monthly check via IRS codes. But if you're not, come to our office or contact the IRS and they will help you. So that will continue, and the reconciliation package will codify it into law, which means it will extend forever. So that's the good news out there. So you will receive those monies for folks under those income levels. There is not another stimulus check planned at this time. We do have to see where things go, because there is a limit to funding. That said, I would like it to extend a little bit longer. I think that would be appropriate, but I don't know if we're going to be able to do that. Was there one more piece in there? I feel like there's one that wasn't answered.
No, I think you
answered
it.
Okay.
From the audience is when will the U.S. embassies will open for visitors visa again?
Yeah, by the way, we sent a letter about this too to the State Department because, as you know, the passport situation and the visa situation is horrifying right now. It's a really long wait. Our understanding is that they'll be back at full complement as soon as we get the variant under control. So the kids vaccine is coming out likely in early November, and then the CDC is telling us that in January we may be back to some level of ability to have many people in a room without masks and fully vaccinated. So we're getting there, but I don't think it's going to be tomorrow.
Thank you, Congresswoman Newman. And so there's a lot of Palestinians in the community.
Yeah.
So, and I think we know your position on this, but we thought we'd ask again.
Sure.
Just so we can kind of hear it in person.
Sure.
It's one question. The question is, do you accept the position that continued expansion of settlements by the state of Israel is in violation of international law?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, I mean, I think, home theft is home theft. I mean, let's call it what it is. I was very clear on the House floor when I made my speeches that it's not right to do that in Bridgeview, Illinois. It's not right to do it in Montreal, Quebec. It's not right to do it in Paris, France. It's not right to do it in Palestine. So stealing homes is wrong, and it's a humanitarian violation, but it is also a criminal violation.
Congresswoman, another question has come from the audience, relates to your vote in favor of $3.8 billion to the nation of Israel for the use of military. Would you explain your position on that, please?
Happy to. So that is a foreign operations appropriations bill. So appropriations bill are part of our Constitution. It funds 40 countries. Among them are Palestine, Israel, India, Syria, Afghanistan, and there's like 35 other countries that are funded in that bill. You get one vote across 40 countries. So I voted yes so that everybody could, because what it did is it restored UNRWA funding and increased the amount of money, funding to go to Palestine. And so we only have a 3-person vote margin right now, just to be clear. If I had voted no, then all of that money to the 40 countries would have been held up for about 8 months to a year. And so, because then what happens is it goes back to committee and has to be reassessed and redone, and then it would go back through the general process, and it would probably take a minimum of 8 months. So that means that all 40 countries would not get any of their money for a really long time. And so based on constituents' feedback, I made the decision to say yes. And by the way, I will make that decision again to say yes. I want to be clear on that.
Thank you, Congressman. And then there is one follow-up here. What policy initiatives will you support to establish territorial rights for Palestinians in the region?
Anything. I mean, honestly, among them, whether it is a more granular bill like Betty McCollum's bill that stops child detention, or it is a means by which we get to the table to talk about a government solution. Whatever it takes, I'm happy to be a part of any of those solutions.
Thank you, Congressman. So.
Yeah, but I would like to ask this of you. Gun violence is escalating in our society. Mass shootings now that used to be limited to low-income or at-risk neighborhoods now are spilling out and reaching the suburbs. I mean, recently we saw a woman shot along the expressway, and she was from Orland Park in your district. It seems that these kinds of killings are becoming too commonplace. What policy solutions do you support or propose to address increased gun violence?
Well, first of all, they're not increasing. They've always been there. They just weren't reported. I just want to be clear on that. This is a horrifying phenomenon we've had for decades. I've been in the gun safety space now for 30 years and worked on a wide variety of legislation, worked with, starting out with Million Mound March, and most recently I was Moms Demand Action's Illinois spokesperson. So this has been a horrible problem forever. What I recommend is, because it is a issue problem, is addressing it as such, right? So starting with making sure that gun dealers are licensed, and we do what we would do with any other business, make sure that they're capable of owning a business like that, that all guns are registered, and that we have background checks. There's a bill called H.R. 8 that passed through Congress, both Congresses, last Congress and this Congress. I voted yes on it, obviously. Would require background checks for anybody buying a gun of any, or a firearm of any sort. So whether you're buying it from your brother-in-law, or you're buying it from a store, or you're buying it at a fair, or some other type of assembly, you have to have a background check, and you have to pass it. So in there, it would not allow for people that have mental illness, disabilities of a significant nature, or if you've been a criminal, or if in fact you've had domestic charges against you. So really important that we have that legislation. Red flag laws would, once someone has been charged or threatened, that they can never own a gun again. Simple, and they collect their guns. Some of the other things that are really important to think about, and this is what we forget about, is typically gun violence is a wide variety of things. It's usually attached to being desperate. So it's usually attached to poverty. So we finally have to start being addressing poverty in this nation, and that's why the reconciliation package of the human infrastructure kind, providing jobs for people, that will provide 2 million jobs for people every year, providing health care. Healthcare, not having healthcare is one of the #1 reasons for suicide. We have 130 suicides every day in this country. My daughter has been suicidal. I know what it looks like up front and personal. So to be clear, until we address poverty and address lack of health care and address lack of affordable housing, mental health care, and provide better for our schools, we're not going to get really far with the gun violence situation. All of those first things I talked about, which are red flag laws and background checks and making sure gun dealers are appropriate, are good reparative and Band-Aid remedies, but they aren't long-term, and we have to start thinking long-term, which is why the reconciliation package is critical, that we start addressing poverty and healthcare in this country.
Thank you. One more question from the audience. The person says, first of all, a huge fan of yours, so that's the compliment. And one of the main systemic issues holding back progress in the U.S. seems to be how corporate money influences politicians, with few notable exceptions. What hope is there that we can get big money out of politics for good?
Gosh, I love this question. It's a huge problem, and just to be clear, I hate fundraising more than anything. I would rather put needles in my eyes. I absolutely hate it. And it takes up a lot of time and energy, and I'm sure people don't love giving money to politicians. I am very certain. So I like it for those reasons, to get rid of it. But more important than that, you get beholden to your corporate donors if in fact you start taking money from them, which is why I don't take corporate money. But there is a bill out there that would do away with all of that, and it's called the Senate Bill number 1 and H.R. 1, which is the House Bill number 1. And so it would be For the People Act, and it would take away all of the dark money ability out of every political PAC's abilities, and it would put transparency out there for anybody that is looking to see who's given to who, right? It also would create a small dollar donation program requirement as part of your electoral mix. So at the end of the day, what this would do is it would stop dark money, would stop the ability to accept corporate money, would be free and fair elections, and make sure that our votes are protected, and stop voter suppression, which is a really big deal. Because if we had more ability to vote out folks that were taking corporate money, we would be in a better position.
On Afghan refugees, the Allies Act was approved for $50 million.
500 million.
500 million.
Yeah.
So when we spoke with resettlement agencies and our contact at Department of Homeland, we were told that it has been transferred to Department of Defense, and most of those cases are deferred to the bases. And once those are released, then they are released to the resettlement agencies. But there has been so much gap in the communication.
Yeah.
It is really, we as an organization have infrastructure and a capacity to help and support.
Yeah.
And we're willing to help and support. Our community have stepped up and really willing to do it. But we're not getting a leadway in getting a word out how we can help and support. So the
Yeah.
question is, we just got a call today that unaccompanied minors are on the plane and they're gonna be arriving here in Chicago
Yeah.
Wednesday at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
And we are willing to help and support, but we don't have a good leverage in getting those connections through the resettlement agencies or even the government. So the question to you is, how can we help and support in that area? And who do we need to have a more direct contact? We do have a contact with Department of Defense
Yeah.
and the Homeland Security, but still, even them don't have a clear communication of how things are getting processed.
Well, that's important to note. So let's do two things. Let's, if you want to talk to Shannon after this, we can see, call the State Department and see what, if they can be the liaison between those three federal agencies and to find out where the money is. Because effectively what your agencies are asking for is, hey, we want to take care of them, but we need a little bit of money to support them, right? So how are we going to access that? I think tomorrow morning we can make some headway. And what I can do before, or I can do when I get to O'Hare is I can make a couple of calls to the State Department and find out how that can get fixed. I don't know, I don't have the answer right now, unfortunately, but we can start working on it tomorrow morning.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Congresswoman Newman, you have a bill, House Resolution 2451, called America's Clean Future Fund Act. And this kind of goes back to the original question that was posed about, you know, the challenges for small businesses in an economy that is changing day by day. How do you see, could you first explain to us a little bit about the Clean Future Fund Act and how you see that this can provide solutions for people here in the 3rd District?
Sure. So the Clean Future Fund Act, Senator Durbin announced or introduced it in the Senate, and I introduced it in the House. And effectively what it does is it creates a massive fund, $100 billion fund that would fund anything from renewable entrepreneurs over to mitigating water crises like Flint. Or we had a water crisis right here in Illinois, 3 out in Crest Hill. They would receive money from this fund. It also mitigates lead pipes. Now, while that's part of the Infrastructure Act and is happening, it would greater support all of those activities. Other things that it would do is provide green entrepreneurs with pathways and access to capital to make sure that they get funded and can do the good work that they're designed to do. But it is largely, it is a fund that would, it's not a bank because the banks take longer to get the money out to the appropriate sources. So this is actually a granting fund that you would apply to and then you would receive the money. And municipalities can take it, or businesses or nonprofits.
Here, this person is really concerned, and he or she says, is our country going in the right direction with the passing of all these anti-democratic laws in Texas, Arizona, Florida, and so on, with the many threats the election officials getting from those neo-Nazis? I really worry.
Yeah.
So any comments on that, please?
Well, first of all, you should be worried, and you should take action, very definitely. You should be worried about this. A lot of people get death threats. I get death threats. There is that neo-Nazi group, that far-right fascist types of groups, the right-wingers, are kind of everywhere, and they're ready to pounce at any given moment. The good news is we do have a federal government that is pushing hard to protect all of our democratic laws. So what I always encourage everybody to do is tell your friendly senators and members of Congress that you support these things and can work on them. But those that are unfriendly too, go ahead and reach out to those Republican senators that are not in our area and remind them this is a democracy and that you can't take away those things. And then lastly, speak out against it, and reach out to our neighbors and friends in Texas, Arizona, and Florida where these things are going on, and let them know that we care about them. But changing state laws is about making sure that you elect government officials at the state and local level that you want to be your next congressperson or senator. Make sure that they are fair and they understand it's a democracy. Because what has happened is that people have been elected that don't care about these things at the state level. And that's why Texas is able to do, all of the voter suppression laws, the anti-women's rights laws, all of those are in place because there's a lot of anti-democratic people in state positions.
Thank you, Congresswoman. CIODC for bringing the Mosque Foundation in with other organizations within the Illinois 3rd Congressional District. And again, I just want to take this moment to thank CIOGC on behalf of the Mosque Foundation for allowing us to have such an amazing event today. I wanted to open up the floor for any closing remarks that you may have.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And then we will leave closing remarks for our chairman and civic engagement director for CIOGC.
Good. Well, first of all, thank all of you in the audience for coming out today. I know that it's summertime and you want to be with your family, so I really appreciate you coming out and chatting a bit. And I want to thank the Mosque Foundation and CIOGC for their great work with all of their neighbors, supporting them through the pandemic and making sure that everybody's safe and sound and fed. It's really important that we all work together, and I'm immensely proud of their work. But lastly, too, this doesn't have to be our last one of these. We can keep talking. Let's keep talking. Let's keep in touch and keep doing these types of things. I'm happy to come and chat with anybody at any time. So let it be known that whether you're talking to my office or you want to talk to me, I'm always open to that at any time. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be able to talk to all of you and all of these supportive organizations. So with that, I will say goodbye.
And thank you, Congresswoman. There were a few questions. We got a lot of feedback, so I know some members of the audience might not have had their questions answered. We will be forwarding those to your office, and look forward to your staff and yourself responding to those as well.
I want to personally thank you, Congresswoman Mary. We know you have a busy day today. I guess you're going to the Palestinian Fest after this, or you've already been there?
I'm not sure what it's good.
Okay. We would love to know if you're going there, because we would love to see you there. But thank you everyone else who are present here, and there are a lot of people who are watching live on Facebook too, so we appreciate everyone's participation in this. The questions were really great. This kept this whole event so engaging, and we actually got a lot of answers today, so that was great. As a civic engagement chair for Council of Islamic Organization of Greater Chicago, I would just kind of give a little brief background on what civic engagement at CIOGC means. CIOGC in its civic engagement is really a big compartment or a big department under CIOGC. And we've done things such as we've involved our communities in census when the census 2020 was going on. We worked towards voters education, voters registration. We've held several candidates forum in the past, and we plan to do more of those in coming 2022. This monthly town hall series is a new series that we started in 2021, and mashallah, we've been really very successful with this. Congresswomen like you and other congressmen have willingly and voluntarily have participated in this. They've helped our community members get a lot of questions answered and processes too, because sometimes, we don't know the processes. So this is really helpful. Some of the other things that we at CIOGC have started is we did the COVID task force last year, which was a very successful task force. Currently, we are formatting an Afghan refugee task force, which is helping the refugees who are coming to the Chicagoland, and so on. So that's a little background about our civic engagement. As a follow-up for today's town hall, we do plan to stay in touch with your staff, and we will be coming to you with some of the, like Brother Ayub mentioned, some of the questions that we were not able to bring up today. We will come to you with those follow-up visits or follow-up meetings. And that being said, I think I pretty much covered everything now. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to have Brother Irshad, our chair of CIOGC, now to make the closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabah, and thank you, everyone, for joining today. I know everybody has a lot of commitments, especially on Sunday, and I see when we came in, there was a janaza here, and I know a lot of you have other commitments as well. So I really do appreciate for you being here today and be part of this program. And on behalf of CIGC is committed to bring this voice of your voice to the congressmen and the senators. And that's what we have been doing for the past 29 years. And inshallah, we're going to continue to be your voice. So that's our commitment on behalf of CIGC, that we will be your representative. So with that being said, this is a program that we have started. We are leveraging our engagement with our political engagement, with our civic engagement chair here, Dr. Sabah Khan. And we're going to continue to build this relationship. We feel that this is a two-way communication, that we need to keep engaging with your office, to us, and with our community, so we are connected and we can work together to help each other out. So with that, I really want to thank you. I know you have a very busy schedule. I know we changed our event last couple times, and finally we got a date today. So thank you for accommodating us. Thank you for hearing from us, and thank you for responding to some of these tough questions, which are tough, but we need to hear from you directly, and that's why we were asking this question. So on behalf of the community, on behalf of District 3, I want to thank you for joining us today and be part of it. In the closing, I really want everyone who has been here today and who are live streaming with us, if we have not answered your questions, please send us a question. We will have a follow-up meeting with Congressman Newman's office, and inshallah we'll have those questions answered for you. So thank you again for joining today, and thank you everyone, and thank you for hosting this. You guys have been an excellent host at Mass Foundation. Thank you all. Thank you very much.